parkway in my automobile, trying to get back to my pappy's corn liquor steal. Soon as I crossed that Buncombe County line, something in the air blew my podcast up high. It was a wisdom from the chicks in the city sticks, and I knew right then it was gonna be my fix. No need for white lightning to get my start. It's hey Lord, have mercy, Hannah, bless your heart. Wardy, yeah, you know what I mean. It's not strange, take it from me. Wardy, come and listen to see weird mountain gals on the Wardy. Up on Weird Mountain, they've been getting their kicks, jamming on the porch just to hit and mash. Stirring up the pot, that's what they do best. They dish it out till there ain't none left. W-Y-R-D, yeah, you know what I mean. No, it's not strange, take it from me. W-Y-R-D, come and listen to see weird mountain gals on W-Y-R-D. Well, I finally found my pappy's corn liquor steal. Filled up the jug and had to hit the trail. Gotta get back to the cottage in the Mashville woods, to the weird mountain gals neighborhood. W-Y-R-D, yeah, you know what I mean. It's not strange, take it from me. W-Y-R-D, come and listen and see weird mountain gals on W-Y-R-D. It's them weird mountain gals on W-Y-R-D. It's them weird mountain gals on W-Y-R-D.
Do you consider yourself normal? Then this is not the show for you. Please go somewhere else. This is WYRD. If it's getting weird, it's got to be the Weird Mountain Gals show. You're listening to Byron and Alicia, the Weird Mountain Gals.
Yeah, and she was super nice.
Yes, she's very nice.
And we are.
And sassy.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know that people who knew me in high school and knew me now will actually claim me occasionally as the person they know.
Well, it was funny because she said something about the podcast, I think to the guy sitting beside her who, we all know. And he said, "Oh, you got to hear that podcast those gals do. It's crazy." And she was talking about it. And I said something about it. And we're always trashing Ashland. She said, "I know. That's why I love it." So if you're listening, Kathy, hey.
Yeah. Kathy rocks. Oh yeah. That's
Anyway.
awesome. Well, that made me proud. Somebody would claim me after all these years. So
It's coming up on my 50th high school reunion, which I swear to God, I never thought I'd live that long. And the little gal that tries to organize us every year, she sent me an email saying, is this the right email? And can I have your street address? I want to mail you an invitation to all the activities. And I just was like, yeah, enjoy. Because, oh boy, there'll be a home game that we can go to. We can play golf at somebody's, and then we could maybe do a picnic in somebody's backyard of somebody that was never nice to me in 4 goddamn years.
Yeah,
So,
and don't forget the obligatory silent auction. Yeah,
I don't think we have those. But then we get together for a big old thing. It used to be with Sid the Surf. for many years.
Yeah.
And now, I don't know, there'll be some DJ or karaoke or something. No way I'm subjecting myself to that.
No. Well, I
The
can't blame
people,
you.
the people that I was close to that supported me and were my friends in high school are still my friends. And they
Yeah.
ain't a lot of them, by the
That's
way.
that's pretty common attitude, I think. A lot of
Yeah.
people feel that way, and
Yep.
for good reason. You
Yep.
know, yeah. I tell you, the reunion that was the best one I've ever been to was the very first one I ever went to, and the reason it was so good is because they gave us a tour of the high school, which I
Oh,
hadn't
yeah.
been in for a while, you know, and
Yeah.
it was really good to go back there and look at it and try and remember where my locker was and, you know, all of that stuff. That was great. But the whole, hey, we're going to a home game and we're going to go golf. It's like that's for that other crowd of people, and maybe they're just better at planning stuff, events and stuff. But my group of people, they didn't really offer a lot, you know,
No.
and that would be the musicians.
Yeah, that would have been yeah.
Or and the people from, you know, theater and stuff like that, the
Right,
geeks
right,
and the misfits and the weirdos and the
right,
artists and my
right.
family and your
Yeah,
family. You
exactly.
know,
That this is not it's not for me.
we should have an alternate reunion one day and just say, did
Where
you hate school?
where
Did
we
you?
go see a really good band concert
Oh yeah.
and we go see the senior class play and go see the art exhibit. Now that would be something I'd love to do.
Yeah, it would. It sure would, but it'll never
I
happen.
didn't,
So
I didn't go to the home game when I was in high school because I didn't give a shit about basketball or football or any of those things that people did out on the field with the ball. I just didn't care.
the only time I really liked it is when my family was involved in it. You know, if I had a brother playing football, which I did, I'd want to see him playing football,
Well, sure.
you know. But other than that, I could have been going to the games right now, just like you could. And I've never, I don't
No,
wish them ill,
no,
but you know,
it just
just
ain't
when
my
it's,
thing. It
mm-mm.
never was my thing and continues to not be my thing.
Well, was it your high school that used to host the giant marching band competition that everybody from the state would show up at? Was that you or was that?
I don't know that we always did that, but I'm pretty sure we did that a few times because the band director was like a nationally known band director. And I wasn't in band,
Mhm.
uh, and I can't remember call his name right. Lackey, John Lackey. And
Mhm.
he was real big in all of that stuff. And I had friends
Mhm.
in the band, but I wasn't in the band because the only instrument I played was piano.
I liked band, and I remember that time.
Well, I was in the chorus, so I
Oh, okay.
sang.
Yep, yep,
Yeah, the people I want to be in touch with, I'm in touch with.
yeah. I already know more about these people than I ever thought I would or even thought about, you know, because they're on my Facebook feed. And
Right.
so I appreciate being able to stay in contact with them. It feels correct, if that makes any sense. I watched my grandmother do that as the town operator, and I watched my mother do that as the welcome committee at the hospital, you know, and now I'm doing it on Facebook is what it feels like. It's kind of keeping
Oh, I like
touch with
that.
people. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
you know, things change and things stay the same. So speaking of things changing, nobody
Yeah.
calls it Decoration Day anymore.
Well, no, because you can't say anything related even nearly to the Civil War of the South because people just get their panties wadded up.
Oh, is that where that I guess it is where it comes from. I never thought of that.
Oh,
Okay, well, all right, then Decoration Day is what
yeah.
it
Another
was
name
called.
for Decoration Day that I have heard is Confederate Memorial Day.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
but can you still say Memorial Day?
I think you can say that because that has to do with the larger community.
Okay. But, you
Yeah.
know, when I hear Memorial Day, I think of cookouts. But when I hear Decoration Day, I think of the weekend that happens with, you know, Decoration Day. For me, it didn't have anything to do with the Civil War. That's just what I grew up hearing it called, you know. And
Right,
it was
me
the
too.
time when we would go to the family reunion is on deck or on that weekend.
Yeah.
We would make sure that the graves were tended before then. All the graves in the cemetery would be tended, and the veterans' graves would have a little flag or something.
Yeah.
And then came, the family reunion was a big deal. These women
Yeah.
would be, all these elderly women, and of course all the rest of the family too, but they'd dress up for it.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was hot.
And sometimes get a corsage.
Yep, I remember
Yeah.
those. Hmm. Yeah, and they'd be outside underneath the shelter because there was a picnic shelter that we had on the property. Because once a year we had, that weekend, and that's what it was for. And they'd be under that shelter serving up this food, like incredible food. It was a big food day for the family because they were going to see everybody, so they
Uh-huh.
had to have the perfect thing. And but they'd be dressed up out of respect. And that doesn't happen anymore, ever. I never
Well,
see that anywhere else.
and you and I are not church going people.
Mm-mm.
I might see it in churches. I don't know, but I know uh, in the Methodist Church, which is the one I'm most familiar with. That was the first of the all day eating and singing on the grounds.
Yeah.
Was Decoration Day, and
Mm.
you went in and you were usually doing the little graveyard at the church, and sometimes, I mean, there would be tent sort of shelters, I guess, set up, but the fellowship hall would also be open.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I get it. Yeah.
and the men folk would be out there, and the women folk would be out there, and then the older women folk would be cooking, and people were telling stories, and the preacher almost always at least made an appearance to got a plate of food and got a piece of that good spice cake with the boiled frosting that everybody loved, and then he would pray over the meal. And the preacher in those days was always a he.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but that was the beginning of that kind of season. So
Yeah.
those same people would appear again at the 4th of July doing the same thing, all day eating and singing on the ground. Be a big old potluck, everything you could possibly want to eat, the children running around. And back then churches often had a little bit of a playground for the young ones. They'd have
Mhm.
a swing set and a slide or something like that. Young ones running around, everybody telling stories, everybody eating good food and cleaning up the graves. And then it happened again towards the fall, and that would be the end of the season of the all day eating and singing on the grounds. And sing, sing, sing. Somebody over in the corner would clear their throat and might even stand up. You know how they would stand up and they'd look a little bit embarrassed,
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm gonna open my mouth and it's gonna be fine, but don't pay too much attention to me. And they'd rip out, when the trumpets of the Lord shall sound, and time shall be no more. Yeah. And then everybody starts singing it. And
Wow.
the men would take off their hats, and women put their hands over their hearts. And oh yeah, it was a beautiful thing.
We never had anything like that I remember anyway, under the picnic shed. But at some point, because there'd be a day or 2 or 3 days that this would be kind of happening.
Uh-huh.
But at some point there would be a porch that had some music on it. It was always fine because that's the
Hmm.
time when you're seeing folks that you haven't really seen in a long time. you
Yeah.
know it was just, yeah, I remember that so fondly, but it it is not even possible now, I don't think, because people don't have family cemeteries. And the reason we did is because, we're out in the hills and there was property. People had
Yeah.
property, and it might not be any good for maybe for gardening or building something on it, but it was a big enough patch to have a family cemetery. And
Yeah.
so now ours is about done. They're getting ready to close it.
Is it all full?
It's mostly full. My parents got a call some years back saying, you need to let us know if you or your family wants any of this, elsewise we're going to close it. And I think she said, no, we're going to be all right. Because, you know, she knew, I guess Dad's buried up here. He's not in a family plot. And so Mom's going to be buried with him.
Uh-huh.
And I'll be cremated. Unless
Right.
I'm just, you know, little bits of flotsam and jetsam because of whatever that happened, and I'm in tiny little bits, but whatever. I'm thinking about, you know, Armageddon coming or whatever the hell is going on, whatever's going to catch
Okay,
us.
let's get into it, because I
Let's
got some
go.
stuff to say about that.
Yeah, go. Your
So
turn.
we have seen, and I've heard this from so many people, it's unbelievable, that what a beautiful spring. And people will bring up their favorite flower. I never saw daffodils so yellow ever in my life.
Yeah.
Oh, the tulips this year, they just lasted forever. Oh my goodness, have you seen the azaleas? Everything, everything. And then you were earlier saying, I had the best strawberries I've ever eaten in my whole
Truth.
life.
That's the truth.
I am hearing that over and over again. And you and I were talking, and I've talked to other people about it too. When that week when we had the aurora borealis, we had hail the size of your fist in
Oh,
Barnersville
yeah.
with spikes. And you
Yes.
and I were saying that is not good. That is an omen. Like if that's not an omen, I'll eat my straw hat. Well,
I'll eat my straw hat.
yeah, since then we have not had to eat our straw hats because everything has fallen apart. And we're still hearing how good the food is. The peas in my garden this year are so delicious. So delicious.
Wow.
I'm on, yeah. It's just been, just one good thing after another. And I've gotten uncomfortable now.
Yeah.
Because what does that mean? So we've had all of these riches and all of this glory, and then what happens next? And I'm not feeling but so sanguine about any of it.
And we had the aurora borealis, as you were saying.
Yeah. And everybody was like, oh, it's so beautiful. What a magical thing. Well, it was beautiful. It was beautiful, what I saw of it. But I don't know, it makes me uneasy.
It makes me, with everything that's going on, this is embarrassing, but it's my confession is I can't help but think of what I used to read and hear about in church about the last days prophecies, you know?
Oh,
And
say more about that.
well, and as you know, I'm not a religious person, but these things that are cropping up sounds like something I would have read in the Bible. Sounds like something I might have heard in class at Bible class or something. Because the school that I went to, that was one of the required classes. You had to take a Bible class every day. And then they taught English out of the Bible. We taught math from the Bible. We taught science out of the Bible, or I say we, but they. And so I'm familiar with a little bit of it, you know, and it really does sound like, and I'm sorry, but the mess in politics and the coup that is being attempted again is also straight out of the Bible. Not only that, but speaking of stuff like that, what the heck is wrong with these Christian militants? I mean, seriously, why are they, I don't get it. Their deal with the Nazis, their fascination with the Nazis, their idea of what strength actually is, and I don't think they think about leadership at all. I think they think about control and power. You know, and so all of this stuff, how did we even get started on it? But dadgum, it all feels like end times, including all these extra special good things.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
What I'm gonna say about all these militant so-called Christians is it feels to me like there's only one book in the New Testament that they've read, and that's the book of Revelations. because I don't see any Jesus in any of these people. I don't see any Sermon on the Mount. I don't see any Beatitudes. I don't see any washing people's feet. I don't see any of that. I see them loading up with their guns and their ammunition and talking about the whole armor of God and standing in the gap and all that militarized patriarchal crap that happened to Christianity when it allied itself to empire.
Right.
And that was both the glory of Christianity, spread it all over the world, but also what it did was make it a militaristic, fascist organization.
Yeah.
And that's not true for every little country church, and it's not
No.
true for every big cathedral, but there is underlying so many of the people that come out of Christianity. There's this underlying sense of we got to be ready for when they come to take us away. And
Yeah.
they are the most powerful body in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's going to come take them away?
Well,
Their brother religion, Islam, is that going to do it?
I don't know, but it's amazing to me that people see, if you look at the big picture in the Bible, okay, we have the main players, the stars of it, so to speak, that everybody knows their name, and they're spoken of specifically in the Bible. But then it seems to me like some of the things that go on with them, especially around the last days, the Bible kind of talks about the people causing it. It's, what was it, Timothy, 2 Timothy? He says that, in the last days, times are going to be difficult and people are only going to love themselves and their money, and they're going to be boasting and proud, and they're going to kind of laugh a little bit at God, and they're going to be disobedient to their parents, and they're going to be ungrateful for their life. Well, that could be talking about people today. Not everybody, obviously, but it talks about the people.
Yeah. But I mean, that also could be talking about people in the 1890s in Western culture and the 1920s, right before the crash.
But the way that I've interpreted it, which who knows if it's right or wrong, but if you look at some of the other things in the Bible, it seems like the Bible speaks about widespread. This is a widespread thing. You can't find blah, blah, blah anymore. The good things, the people who are truly good, they take themselves away from the world, is the way that I interpret it. And then, but the population as a whole, they're boasting. They don't have any spirituality, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it just seems like as a species in this country that I can observe. There we go. Did I qualify it enough? It just seems like in one generation, it just seems like everything has changed in people's attitudes, priorities, and the things that they work for or want. That's what it seems like to me. I try to surround myself with people like you, Byron, even though there are not very many of them out there. People whose priorities are not things. You see?
Yeah.
But it's getting really hard to find that.
I was just thinking, the pride goeth before the fall, cometh before the fall.
Yeah, pride goeth before a fall.
Yeah, and that's Proverbs, I think. If my KJV is where I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Bible's always been an interesting book to me because it's the only book that I know of that you can find an opposite answer to any question. So there's lots of books that you can't ask any question of in the first place. But even if you could, you wouldn't get that opposite answer. But what makes all the difference, it seems like, is Old Testament versus New Testament. And so the churches that I went to and the sermons that I was exposed to kind of would take a little bit from here and a little bit from there and a little bit from this other place. and kind of mix it together. And I don't think that was the way it was intended when it was put together. The Bible was put together, and we could talk about all the books that were left out and all the foibles in the translations and all of that. But let's just say we're just talking about this version that you and I know. It is an amazing book. It is, but it's also a very confusing book and a contradictory book. You're told, thou shalt not kill is one of the 10 commandments. And yet you go and take communion, and it says, this is my body, which I've given up for you. Here, take it and eat it, and the blood, the wine, this is my blood that I've shed for you. Take this and drink it, all of you. This is my blood that I shed for you. It's like, if that doesn't sound like a cult, it at least sounds like something that is forbidden or shouldn't be done as a Christian person. That's an inherently violent thing to me.
Yeah. I mean, I know some very good and lovely and marvelous Christians, but I ain't got nothing for Christianity in general. I just don't. It confuses people. It makes people feel bad when they don't need to feel bad. I mean, it's just,
I know, but it's a riveting book, and I don't know what to say except it's so confusing to somebody like me, I guess. But thou shalt not kill. Here, Abraham, go kill your son. What for? Oh, because I wanted you to. Let's just see if you'll do it. I mean,
I still maintain the hardest thing about it, and I say this as a polytheist, is that when you have only got one God, okay, you've got a 3-in-1 God, but still basically one God, then that God has got to be responsible for all the joy, but also all the sorrow and all the good and also all the evil. So if that God is all powerful, all knowing, and all loving, you got to twist yourself into a pretzel to figure out how a baby dies.
Right. Or people suffer.
How is it and the world's great religions talk about, well, what is suffering, and if God is so good, why do we have to suffer, and all of that? And I mean, those are valid questions.
Yeah, and
it's easier, I think, for people like me that have, a whole plethora of divinities, and this thing right here is Kali kicking my butt about something. Okay. But then you can go, and I'm gonna gang up with my gal Bridget, and we're gonna figure out how we're gonna heal the situation and do, so we have all these ways to look at it, because we're not investing everything that is the human experience into a so-called loving God.
Right. And there's not the control by guilt, control by fear thing going on. You don't have to worry. I spent, how wasteful, but as a young child, I spent some time worried about, well, what if I die and I haven't asked for forgiveness for something I've done? I'll go to hell. Now, kids should not be saddled with that.
No,
I don't think anyway. But I was, I read that in the Bible or heard it somewhere or something, and it really bothered me. It really bothered me,
It's designed to bother you. It's designed to keep you manageable and controlled, so that you're not a pain in the ass on Sunday morning, and you're not asking embarrassing questions, which I'm sure both of us did.
Yeah. Well, you said the word, though, control. It's all about control. And it is a difference in the pagan community and their beliefs and Christian community and their beliefs. There's a big difference there, and control is the main thing. We all know, I mean, we could do many episodes on the history of control that we know about in philosophies and religions. don't you think? And probably nobody would be interested except for me and you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to get together on the porch with a cup of tea for that one.
Yeah. You know what would make it really interesting?
What?
It depends though, if we want to be civil or not. If me and you just want to holler and just let it out, then it needs to be just us probably. But somebody like getting the two Davids on the porch, David Selby and David A.
Yeah.
And me and you, and just see what we would come up with. But we'd have to be civil because those guys can't take it. I wouldn't want to show my butt to either one of them.
No, I mean they are two Christian men
And
that,
decent.
for whom I have a great deal of not only affection but respect.
Same. I don't know David as well as David number one as well as you do. But what I do know of him, I have a real respect for him, and I've seen the way that he's talked with people in the shop when he's come in and so on. And I read whenever he posts something, I do. And of course, Selby's just, what can you say about Selby? I have
He's a good one.
respect for him.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And the longer I know him, the more respect I have for him. And so that he's a precious person in my life. He is. But, we can disagree about a few things, but we stay nice about it to each other. And that I appreciate.
Well, my grandfather was a Methodist lay minister. And we had many and many, and I would love to say it was a conversation, but it wasn't, because I was in college, so I was young and sassy and arrogant. And he was arrogant as only a man in his, I guess at that point he was probably in his 70s.
Okay.
A man of God in his 70s can be. And I remember us, and I can even remember where we were. We were sitting at the kitchen table at my grandmother's, and he was talking about sin and the nature of sin. I mean, those are the kind of conversations we had.
That's
and
awesome.
He was saying everybody is sinful. Our nature is sinful. And I said, your nature is not sinful. And he said, oh, no, I'm the biggest sinner of all. I said, you absolutely are not. You're not a sinner. And he said, no, we are all sinners. We are all, we've all pulled ourselves away from the love of God, blah, blah, blah. About that time, my grandmother came in the room, and she was in the middle of cooking something. And she also was doing laundry and doing, like you do if you're the woman of the house. She was doing all that shit while me and my grandfather were arguing religion.
Yeah.
And either one of us could have helped her, but did we know? Because she was just doing it. And she came in, and I turned to him and I said, that woman is without sin. And he looked at me, and he got this look like, you are trying to get me in so much trouble. And he said, all right, well, I'll give you that one.
I love it. That's good. Well, would you rather talk religion or politics back then?
Well, I think back then was right after Watergate. So pretty much everybody was disgusted with politics all the way around.
Yeah.
So I just don't know that there was much to say. I remember going to protests. That would have been, well, I lived with them from the fall of 1974 until 1979.
Yeah.
So that was, there was I guess a fair amount of political turmoil there, but not like it had been in the 60s and early 70s.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember us talking about politics so much because, they were all Democrats. Back in the day, they were all Democrats, and they were just like, well, so-and-so is whatever, and so-and-so is whatever, but I'm voting a straight Democrat ticket.
Well,
but they aren't that way now. All those people who years ago would have been Democrats. No, they're not Democrats now. They're more conservative, I think, than that.
Well, back whenever my mom and dad married, we became a blended family at that point. And so all of my life we were a blended family, meaning that Democrat on this side, the Republicans over here on that side.
Whoa.
And I loved it. Now, they didn't really talk politics among themselves that much, other than strategy or something like that. Or if somebody asked a question or there was some news, but they didn't really talk politics, so to speak. They definitely didn't argue much. But then when the other family would get around, the other family members that had married in or whatever you want to say, that's when the fireworks would happen. And even then, it was civil enough to where nobody hated anybody. People still spoke and shared a meal together, but it would maybe be what we would refer to as a heated conversation today. But they still said their piece and everything, and I would learn a lot from it. Now, what we have today, going on today, is shameful. It's beyond a joke. I used to think it was just a joke. Hey, thank you for spending your time with us here at Wyrd Mountain Gals. We sure do appreciate it. I know time is the most important thing we have. So I promise that if you take your time to listen to us, we'll take our time to continue to be weird. Many thanks to Sunslice Records for all the help. We couldn't do it without you, Craig. Check out our social media for information, community, or a few laughs. WYRD Mountain Gals.